video, we're going to take a look at Microsoft SharePoint Online from scratch. So everything that you need to know to get yourself up and running as quickly as possible. Check it out. Hello everyone, welcome back. It's great to see you. Andy here. On this episode, I thought I would take a look at Microsoft SharePoint Online, an integral part of Microsoft 365, and it's amazing how many people don't know it. And it ties in and it weaves in to all those other features like Microsoft 365 groups, Teams, and so much more. It's the backbone of Microsoft's storage platform, and to understand it is to understand how Microsoft 365 works. So in this episode, I'm going to take you through everything you need to know from zero to hero. Now, just want to mention just before we start that on the 7th of May, I'm running a Dive Deeper Tech Days event. This is your opportunity to attend a full day's Zoom training with myself, and we're going to go through some really cool content. So we're going to do identity, we're going to do security, compliance, and of course, Microsoft 365. So if you want to be a part of it for a very low cost, check out the details below. Now, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, we would love for you to come on board and join our happy family. So click on that subscribe button up there, ring that bell, and come and join us. And if you've got questions and comments about this or any of my other sessions, as always, get those down below. So I think without any further ado, let's jump in and let's take a look at SharePoint Online from scratch. Enjoy. So I'm kicking off here in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. And for those of you who are not familiar with SharePoint, SharePoint is really the kind of the cornerstone of everything that's storage in Microsoft 365. And you can see that you can find it down here in the left-hand side of the pane here. Now, I'm going to click on SharePoint and let's take a look at what we can see inside. So first up, you'll see the home page, and the home page here, you can see that we have these card-based systems. And the idea is it just gives you a nice kind of status of what's going on and if there's anything that needs your attention. You can see there's not much happening here. Now, the cool thing about these cards, though, is you can flip them and move them and change them. And of course, you can also add other cards here that meet your specific requirements. Then we have our list of active sites, and these are active websites within our company. And as I scroll down here, you'll see that there are quite a few, in fact. And also you'll notice that some of the sites have a little T or a Teams symbol behind them. Now, I really love this page because it shows me all the different sites. It shows me the URL to the site, so if I want to take a look, whether it's connected to a Microsoft team. And in Microsoft Teams, you can create what we call channels. So within that channel, it creates essentially a subsite within Microsoft SharePoint. It also shows you how much storage you've actually been using, who was the primary admin for that particular team, and also I'll show you this in a second, the hubs, what template the site is using, when it was last active. This is really useful because there's nothing worse than folks that go ahead and create resources for just one project, and then suddenly 3 years down the line, you find that it's never been used. And it's just kind of you just feel like it's a bit of a waste, don't you? You can also see when it was created, who created it, whether it's a Microsoft 365 group. What's that got to do with a website? Well, I'll tell you that in a second. How many pages, and you get some really useful kind of statistics about it. And this is really nice. You can see instantly whether this site is being shared, and also if you've got a sensitivity label on it. So I really love this page. Now, of course, you can also see that we have got deleted sites. So any sites that have been deleted, and you can see I've got a few here, you can see that they're slightly grayed out here. And again, if I wanted to restore these back, I would simply need to select the site and then restore it back. And everything is as it was. So how do we create a site, I hear you say? Well, you can do one of a number of things, actually. So up here on the toolbar, you can see that we've got a big grey button that says Create. So I can come in here, and essentially we have got access to two types of templates. One is a team site, so just for yourself and your team and a group of individuals, or you can have what we call a communications site. I can also scroll down here, and there are more templates here as well. So now the only difference between these templates is that these are classed as what we call modern templates. And if you click into the Browse More, you can see that in here we have a number of templates. But if you're familiar with the old versions of SharePoint, some of these are specific to the older versions. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, hey, I think we'll go back actually. Let's go back, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to create a team site. So you can see that we have a number of nice kind of templates that we can use. It all looks really nice, doesn't it? So I'm going to go with this one, seeing as we're on a training course. I'll say, yeah, I want the training course template. So it tells you a little bit about the template, and also, of course, you can customize all aspects of this, which are really nice. So I'm going to say, yep, this is the template that I want to do. And for this, I'm in Oslo this week, so let's call this my Oslo HQ. So this is my Oslo HQ site. I can put in a little description, and you can see it automatically generates the template. Now, I've created one of these previously, so I'll just put a 1 in front of that. And one of the things you want to do with your site is you probably want to create or add an owner. So a group owner is really useful, because what this does is you can, for example, if you've got a remote site, you want somebody who's fairly skilled to be able to manage that site, you can bring them in. So for the purpose of this demo, I've got a user called Megan. I'm going to bring Megan in. Now, you can set the privacy setting. And to be honest, if you're familiar with creating groups or teams, first of all, you're going to notice a few similarities here, because when you create a modern SharePoint site, you're actually also creating a Microsoft 365 group. And if you're not familiar with that, they're awesome because they're fully collaborative, which is absolutely awesome. Now, the key thing here is this going to be a public folder, a public website, i.e. not on the internet, by the way, on an intranet within your organization, or is it going to be private just between a group of users? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this, in fact, I'll make this public. And again, you can choose the language, and you can also choose the time zone as well. I'm going to go ahead and click on Create the Site. And at this point, it says, hey, do you want to add some members? I'll bring in Alan and Alec. All right, so that's pretty good. We've got a bunch of users. We've created a site. So I'm going to click on and click Next. Okay, so now you can see that if I just scroll down, sure enough, we've now created a site called Oslo HQ. Now, what makes this interesting is I'm just going to click back into my Microsoft 365 portal, and if I scroll down here, in fact, if I scroll up rather, I'm going to come into Teams and Groups and Active Teams and Groups. And let's just refresh the page and let's see what we can see. So I'm going to scroll down here and look at that. I have got a fully collaborative Microsoft 365 group. So hang on a minute, Andy. Are you saying that I can create a Microsoft 365 group from a site? Absolutely, you can. And just to show you the difference between the public and the private, I'm going to come into Microsoft Outlook, and I just want to show you one little thing. So here in Outlook, by the way, this is an E5 subscription, but even if you've got like a business premium or something like that, you're going to get a very similar experience. So I'm going to scroll down and check it out. Oslo HQ, it's automatically created this Microsoft 365 group. And of course, it is, the idea of it is that it's fully accessible, it's public. So basically anybody can access this particular group. Now in here, you can see that we have got a mailbox. I've got a shared document library. And the key thing about this to remember is that the document libraries here in SharePoint can be up to 25 terabytes for shared storage within teams and groups. So that's awesome. You also get a calendar, and you've got things like a notebook, planner, a site, and so on. Now, you'll also notice that if I went down to discover more groups here, you can see that public groups, anybody can just join them. So it would just say join. But if it's a private group, you need to request to join the group. So just a little bit about the privacy there. Okay, now with that, I'm just going to come out of that, and I'm going to come back into SharePoint, because the other thing that I wanted to just mention here, in fact, no, I can do it from here as well, actually. So I'm going to come back into my Oslo HQ, and I'm often asked, Andy, what's the difference between a group and a team? Well, a team is an extension of a Microsoft 365 group. So would you like to add in Microsoft Teams? Absolutely. Just before you do this, though, remember one thing, that this is an irreversible action. So you can't change your mind. So I'm going to click on yes, and that's fine. And that now creates that important Microsoft team. Now, if I just come into Teams, so I'm just going to open up my Teams client here. So coming into Teams, I just want to point out that SharePoint is such an integral component in Microsoft 365. So the first thing I want to do is I'm just going to switch to the new Teams client. So this is the Teams 2 client here. And as you can see, I'm in my team. So what's the difference then between a group and a team? So if I scroll right down here, you can see that we have a number of groups here, and you can see that here is my Oslo group, which I started off as a website, of course. Now you'll notice that in here we have a number of sheet tabs, and within the sheet tab, within the team, we also have a number of channels. And the cool thing about this is you can add in additional channels. So I can call this let's say managers, and again within here you can choose whether you want to make a standard channel, a shared channel, or a private channel. And again, I'm going to say this, I'm going to make a private channel. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click onto that. Now, as I mentioned, at the moment, I can say, yeah, do you want to type in an email? Do I want to let them know? So now that I've added in managers here, you can see that it's got a little padlock on it. But what makes that interesting is that, as I said, once you extend a group to become a team, you can then add in things like third-party apps. And there are hundreds of apps available. Also, you've got things like the phone conferencing, you've got video conferencing and chat messaging and so much things. But the key thing to note here is that all the communications, well, certainly the chat messages and things like that, that goes into Exchange, whereas all the storage is essentially in SharePoint. So if I come back into my SharePoint Admin Center, I'm just going to go ahead and just refresh this page, if I scroll down to Oslo, you will see, where are we? It's now a Microsoft team, but check it out. I've also got another site here. So in essence, by creating that Teams channel, you have created a subsite in Teams. Okay, very cool. So the other thing that I want to do is I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to create another team. And I'm going to call this team, let's call this team, let's use this template. I'm going to call this Oslo Marketing. Okay, so this is Oslo Marketing. I'm going to put in a group owner again, so I'll put in Megan. I'm going to click on Next. Again, privacy settings, I'm just leaving. Now you'll notice here that this is the default. So if you want it to be public, you need to go in and change that there. So I'm going to click on Next. And again, I can add some members in. So I'll just add Adele. I'll just add Cameron. I'll just add, who else? Alex. Okay. So I'll just add my 3 members in here. And now that I've done that, once I've added in my members, I'm just going to click on Finish. And you can now see that I've created Oslo Marketing and I've also got Oslo HQ. Now, Andy, you mentioned something called a subsite. So a subsite, think of it as a folder structure in Windows Explorer. So when you create a folder, let's say called data, you can create a subfolder within it, and it's rigid. It doesn't move, you understand? Now, in SharePoint, you can still do that. You can create that rigid folder structure, but check this out. I can select a folder here, or my site, and you'll notice that up here on the toolbar, if I go into the little ellipse, by the way, you'll notice the ellipse if I just expand my screen, you see the more buttons appear. It's just because I'm zoomed in that I need to click on the ellipse. We have an option here for a hub. So I can come in, I can say, hey, I want to register this site as a hub site. And I can say who can associate sites with the hub site. I'm going to say Megan. And I'll say save. So check it out. Now that I've done that, I'll close that. And what I can do is I can now select Oslo Marketing. And I'll go back in to the hub and I can say, hey, I want to associate this website with a hub site. So I can choose the hub site that I want to bring it in. And I can click on save. How cool is that? That means that it's associated with Oslo HQ. So that means that Oslo Marketing will pick up all the website settings from Oslo HQ. So if I come into the settings here, you can see that I can see the site address. Let's take a look and see what we can see. Doesn't it look good? Now, look, by the way, you get a template at the beginning, but if you want to change the template, absolutely, you can go and do that. I'm just going to click maybe later. So what we can see here is this is our website. And of course, years ago, you used to have special web authoring software to edit all of these features. Nowadays, it's really super simple. So what we can see is, first of all, you've got a number of menus. So I can create different types of content. And this might differ depending on the template that you're using. I can click onto the page details. So it gives me some information about the page. So it gives me a description and so on. And I can customize that if I want to. It tells me about the analytics of the page as well. So how busy is it? What are the best areas of it? What are the worst areas? How much traffic is the page enjoying, and so on. Now you can see here, I can go ahead and I can create a subsite within here. So if you want to create that additional channel, if you will, or subsite, you can do that from within here as well. I can share the site out if I want to. So I can share this page out, I get a link, and I can share it with my colleagues. I can also edit the page. So again, with a little pencil, I can come in here and I can say, hey, do you want to apply a title? And it shows you what to do. So you've got really nice documentation, and many of them actually include things like video training as well. Now, you'll notice that as I float my mouse pointer over these little boxes, you'll see that it says document library. This one says quick links. This is what we call a web part, okay? And things about web parts is you can drag and drop them, you can move them, so you can completely change the structure of your page. And in fact, there are many web parts available. So I can go in and insert more web parts if I want to. Now I can also double click, and you can see I can move things like the pictures around, and you can see if I click onto the pencil, I can go ahead, I can update the text, I can change the background image, the options, and you've even got things like spell checkers and so on. Very, very cool. So once you've finished making your changes, all you need to do is ultimately just publish this page, and that's it. You're back to square one, and I want to republish it. So off it goes, and it makes that page available to my users. One thing that we should really talk about is permissions, site permissions. So I'm going to close the website down, and you can see, well, there's a number of ways to do this. First up, you can see the properties of the website. So it tells me the details of the site information, the address, the hub association. Remember that? We just did that. Really nice. I can go into the activity pane here. It gives me details about the site, how much storage has been used, who the members are, and this is really what we're looking for here. So with a modern site, I can see the owners. So Megan is my owners, and I've got some members here. You can also set individual site admins. So if you create subsites, you can have individual administrators manage those subsites. Likewise with the owners as well. You can also, so this is almost like a subset of users, and we call this a site collection, by the way. You can also bring in site visitors. So if you want to bring in guests, for example, you can do that. I can click onto the settings page, and to be honest, whether you're clicking into a group property, a team property, or a SharePoint property, it doesn't matter. You'll get the same menu. So here you can see, for example, it created an email address for the group or for the website. So if you want people from outside the organization, then you can add that email in. You can also send copies of emails to other team members. If you don't want the team to show up in the address book, you can do that. You can also change the private and public. At the moment, I've not enabled sensitivity labels, but again, if you had, I would be able to set a sensitivity label here. You can also decide whether are you going to allow to run scripts or allow members to have a Teams conversation. And remember the hub site. So you can see this site has been registered as a hub site. I could change that if I want to. So you can see here, I can email the members of the group or the team or the site. I can open it in Teams, and I can also go ahead and view that website. Now, if I go in and view the website now, I just showed you the modern permissions. What about, are there any other ways to set permissions? And you'll notice that a little gear icon has appeared and it says settings. So you can scroll down here and you have a number of various settings. And these are the kind of quick links, if you will. Now, the other thing that you can also do is you can change the look of it. You can view the site performance and so on. So if I go into the site permissions, you can see that you got those 3 new kind of next generation sets of permissions. So I've got my site owners, site members, and my site visitors. Now, again, also site sharing. I'll come back to that in a moment. You can also, it says here that you can have advanced permission settings. So I'm going to click into that, and what this does is it takes me into the classic SharePoint portal. And you can see here, if you wanted to customize permissions, you can see that you've got 3 kind of default groups. And this is really useful. You can create groups from within here. Just note though, these are not 365 groups. These are security groups. You can also see the site collection administrators. I can also go in and view the permissions levels. So these roles are essentially a combination of different sets of permissions. So if you wanted to customize that, again, you can do, and it's super easy. By the way, if I click into any of these roles, you can see it breaks down the individual permissions. So again, I can click into any of these roles and it shows me what permissions they have. So again, everyone has external actions. Again, I can email the users. I can view the settings. So I can go in and have a look at the group permissions, for example. So that will open up another window and I can see what sets of permissions that these users have. So we've looked at creating a site. We've looked at managing permissions. We've also talked about teams and groups. And I suppose the next thing we should talk about is sharing. So to deal with sharing, I'm going to come back into the SharePoint Admin Center and I'm going to come down here into the left-hand menu, and in here it says Policies and Sharing. So first of all, you can see that we have got some sharing options here. So one is for SharePoint and one is for OneDrive. And you can see you have a number of different levels, if you will. So first things first, the one thing you should understand about this portal is that this is the tenant. So anything that you set here, it will waterfall down to all the other sites, okay? So what we have here is the most permission, so the most permissive. So anyone can share content, and this can potentially include anonymous users. So for example, a guest could potentially share. New and existing guests. So we all know that we can create guest accounts in Microsoft 365, and a guest account traditionally has restricted permissions. Now, the key thing here is that we also have discussed that Teams, of course, is a major collaborative platform, and I can go in and I can invite, for example, customers or suppliers or other folks that I want to come on board so that we can collaborate together. And I can send out invitations. Now, the key thing that you should understand is when you send out a Teams invitation and it's accepted, the user is then created in Entra ID, or Azure Active Directory, as it used to be known. Now, the key thing here is, of course, there's 2 choices. So that means that your users can invite people in, so by sending out that Teams invitation. Whereas this option here just says existing guests. So this would not allow users to go off and invite guests that are not in your directory environment. So for example, you might use this as, if you've got like a procedure that requires a manager or a team leader to sign off the creation of a guest account. So maybe you need to put in a request for it. So the idea here is that user account must pre-exist in Entra ID. And of course, the least permissive is you can only share with everybody in your organization only. Now, typically what you would do here is you would set this at this kind of level for the entire organization. And you've got some kind of default settings here. So who can share, what are the default links and things like that. But where it gets really interesting now is if I now come back to the Sites tab, come back into Active Sites, and now I can just select a site. So I'm going to scroll down, and here is my Oslo marketing site. So I can click into here, and what I might want to do is, well, first of all, it's giving me that, do you wish to upgrade to Teams, the whole routine there. But also, if I click onto the Settings tab, check it out, look, external file sharing. Remember, this is for the individual site. So if I now click on the drop down arrow, look at what's happened. So it's picked up that default tenant setting. So I can't go and share anyone, but I can choose something more restrictive for this particular site. So again, I'm just going to click on save, and there you have it. So the key things, ladies and gentlemen, is that when you're setting your sharing permissions, this is what you need to think about from the organization perspective. So get this right first of all. So everything waterfalls down from this. So ultimately, going back to individual sites, I can then come to an individual site. I can click onto the Settings tab, and again, you can see I can then choose the level of sharing that best suits me. All right, super important. And again, you'll see that this kind of pane is available in both Teams and also SharePoint and OneDrive for Business. And of course, it's in Microsoft 365 as well. Okay. Now, I wanted just to do a quick mention here. Microsoft have some fabulous tools for migrating content into Microsoft 365. The file share one is probably one of the ones that you would use most. So if you've got file shares on traditional servers, then this can be quite useful. There is full documentation here, and it takes you through to learn.microsoft.com. I keep getting that mixed up. The other thing that we've got, of course, are also some third-party ones. And you've also got SharePoint server migration. So if you've got older versions of SharePoint server and you want to migrate to the cloud, then you've got this. All right. And then finally, you've got some reporting here as well. Finally, I just want to mention advanced management. So SharePoint Advanced Management is a brand new feature. The idea of this is it's going to include a series of new policies. Now, to be honest, they've made it an advanced feature. It is an additional premium price on top of your regular license. And to be honest, some of the settings here, so for example, block downloads for OneDrive and SharePoint, conditional access for SharePoint and OneDrive. Come on, Microsoft. I think you're just getting a little greedy with this one. Okay, so unfortunately, I don't have a license for this. I am planning to cover this in a future session, though. Okay, now, there you have it, just a little bit of SharePoint. So in that session, we talked about how to create sites, We talked about how to edit the sites. We talked about storing, sharing, how the sites fully integrate with the likes of Teams, Microsoft 365 groups. We talked about the sharing settings there, and I mentioned some of the advanced stuff there as well. So I hope that's giving you a real eye-opener as to what SharePoint Online is, and more importantly, what it can do for you. So there you have it, Microsoft SharePoint Online from scratch. I really hope that you enjoyed it and that you got a lot out of it. Now, questions and comments about this or any of my other sessions, as always, just get those down below. And if you've not subscribed, then bump the subscribe button. Come on board and join our learning family. That's it for this time. You stay safe. I'll see you soon. Hey, thanks so much for dropping by today. Here's a couple of videos that you may enjoy, and while you're here, go ahead, click on the subscribe button and you won't miss out.